Welcome to the Indy Freethought Show. I'm Steve Dewar, co-host, and with me is Reba Boyd-Wooden, Executive Director of CFI Indy, and we're recording at the Center for Inquiry Indy and got a nice shot of the canal behind us. So we've had a lot of activities going on. Reba's been to Washington twice, and we also have a lawsuit on secular celebrants being able to marry people in the state of Indiana. So, Reba, if you could just recap for us.
Yeah, I'm getting to be, sounds like almost a regular commuter to D.C. for a few weeks because I was there for the Reason Rally. And then I got a chance to go to a meeting at the White House. So I took that chance, and then I was there for the Women in Secularism Conference. So the meeting at the White House was a meeting that was arranged by an alliance called the Alliance for Justice, which is a coalition of several not-for-profits. And the issue that we talked about was the vacancies on the federal courts that are a big problem right now.
Not being filled for partisan reasons, I understand.
Right. The way these appointments work is the president nominates people, and the Senate Judiciary Committee vets them and approves them, but then the Senate has to confirm them by 2/3 vote, and there's where the problem's been, because the senators, some of them are blocking Obama's nominations, and it's a really crucial problem because some of our federal courts are so short-staffed that they can't even do any business.
They can't function. And
some of them are short-staffed, they can function, but it just slows down the whole process. So this is quite a problem. And we were given some statistics about former presidents and how many of their appointments had been confirmed by this time. And there are many, many more of President Obama's that have not been confirmed than there were of the previous recent presidents. So there's some political implications to this that are slowing this down. Okay. And we met in a conference room, lecture room style, in the West Wing office building of the White House, and we had some pretty high-profile speakers who spoke to us. Probably the highest-profile one was Attorney General Eric Holder. Really? And emphasizing, what a problem this is. And I think when there's a Supreme Court vacancy, people get concerned about it. They really pay attention, but what they don't realize is that most federal decisions are made at lower court level.
Right.
Very few cases ever make it to the Supreme Court. So this is a pretty critical problem.
Okay. Was any progress made in this meeting, or is this just informative?
It was more informative, and the fact that they had the meeting to try to get press coverage to make people more aware of the problem, and to ask people to contact their senators and see if they can't get this moving a little bit.
Okay.
We had 3 busloads of people at the meeting who were bused over to Capitol Hill to meet with their senators that afternoon. And I was in both Senator Lugar and Senator Coates' office that day. Spoke with one of Senator Coates' staff members, just presented our material and our arguments. Senator Lugar, this was the day before the primary in Indiana, so I think his staff was pretty busy.
Okay.
So we didn't actually get to speak with anyone, but we left our materials there for them to look at.
Okay. Has anything happened since that meeting?
I don't think much has. There might have been, I think there were a couple of them or so that were slated to be voted on, and but there hasn't been much progress of anything made.
Okay.
So then I went back for the first ever Women in Secularism conference. One of the problems that many of us have discussed over the years is that the whole secular movement.
Middle-aged white guys.
Middle-aged white guys, PhDs, philosophy professors. And and even here in Indiana, if you notice a lot of our meetings, women are in the minority of being here. So this was a special conference to encourage women to get more involved. And men were invited to attend also, but it's the largest collection of secular women I think I've ever seen together at one time.
Well, I don't think you need any more encouragement since you are director here.
But so it was really good, and there were, of course, men there too, and the speakers were all women. One of the speakers was Susan Jacoby, who has written 3 or 4 books, but one of her books we studied here at CFI a chapter at a time, a couple years. It's called Freethinkers, The History of Secularism in America. And then Annie Laurie Gaylor, who is co-president of Freedom from Religion Foundation, spoke, and she has an anthology which came out several years ago that's about this thick. It's a collection of writings by women freethinkers, 19th and 20th century.
We have both books at home.
Right. And we've done some discussions on that. We had Annie Laurie here to speak one time a few years ago. Also, one of the speakers was Jennifer Hecht, who wrote the book Doubt, which has nothing to do with the movie or play, but it's a history of the great doubters of the world, which is probably the most comprehensive history of our secular movement that's ever been written. And she goes all the way back as far as she could and found that there were doubters in every civilization, and that's who she wrote about.
Okay.
So and then there were panels with several of the prominent bloggers.
So why aren't there more women in Freethought?
That's still a question, I think. And some of the women feel that they have been discouraged from being involved because they've been marginalized by some of the leaders. Other people feel that it's maybe more the responsibilities on the women themselves, that they haven't gotten out there and tried to be involved. So I think that's still an open question about that. On the last day, Margaret Downey made a presentation on secular celebrations. And so she invited me to take part of her time to talk about the Secular Celebrant program that CFI has, which I'm the director of, and also about our case that we have here in Indiana now. We have a lawsuit against the state of Indiana, against the marriage law in Indiana.
And 2 of our members here have agreed to be plaintiffs.
Right. The plaintiffs in the case we had to have a couple who was planning on being married, who were affected by it. So John Keel and Michelle Landrum agreed to be plaintiffs. Also, the Center for Inquiries and Organization is a plaintiff. I'm a plaintiff because I'm the representative of CFI in Indiana as the executive director here, also as a secular celebrant and as the director of the program. So that case was filed a couple of weeks ago in federal court, Southern District of Indiana. Okay. And we just have to sit back and wait on that right now.
Is there any estimate on the time frame when that will come up?
I don't really know. I was really happy that Ken Falk at ACLU of Indiana took the case, which we have in Ken. We have the best representation we can have. And I know that the wheels of justice turn slowly, so it's sit back and wait, and I don't really have an estimate. I haven't asked Ken. Maybe he has an idea from past cases, but it will be a while, I think, before we get any action on it.
So are John and Michelle going to hold off until the disposition of this case?
I'm not sure. I think some of that may be up to them. I'm not sure how that's going to work out for them. But I think a little explanation of the case might be good because I think many people don't really understand why we're doing this case, why it's an issue, and so it takes a little bit of an explanation
Go right ahead.
For that, which I've done several times. In every state in the United States, and maybe in other countries too, I'm not sure, a marriage has to be what the legal term is solemnized, and many people have never even heard of the term. What does that mean? Well, I'm not sure what the origin is, but it means basically that somebody who's authorized has to sign the license to make the final step for it to be legal. And that usually would entail a ceremony, possibly in most cases maybe by religious authority in the past.
Yeah, who all in Indiana can legally marry people? Just to clarify for people watching.
Yeah, for in Indiana, maybe just backtrack a little bit. The steps for getting a legal marriage in Indiana. First, everybody has to go get a marriage license, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the county clerk handles that. And your first step is the county clerk has to verify that you are a couple that can legally marry in Indiana. That is, you're not too closely related, or you're not married to somebody else, or you're of opposite sex, or you're. I think it's still true that the bride, if the bride is of childbearing age, they have to show proof of a measles shot. There's just certain legal things, and if the clerk says, okay, your stuff's all in order, you can legally be married, then they pay a fee to the clerk, get their license, the clerk signs it. But then you flip the marriage license over on the other side, and there's a second step. And you have to have somebody, quote, solemnize it. When you get to that step, there are two classes of people that can solemnize a marriage. In Indiana, and this is true in most other states, it's a little different, but most states are like Indiana. And so it has to be any religious clergy person can do it.
Okay.
And there's a blanket statement about the clergy of any religion, and then there's a long list of 10 or more specific religions that are listed. Now, I'm not sure why they need to be listed. It looks like they're covered anyway, but this was just to make sure, I guess, that somebody didn't find an exception. But they're all religious people.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side, if you're not religious and you don't want a religious person to do it, then you can have it done by the clerk while you're there. You can have it done by a judge. In Indiana, an attorney can do it if the attorney gets deputized as a judge for the day for that particular marriage. But here's where the problem comes in. And I've had, over the years, I've had really 3 different kinds of couples come to me who are having trouble finding somebody to solemnize their marriage. And, you know, anybody, you know, if you don't want a religious wedding, anybody could just have the clerk or judge do it. But if you want to have a big, nice wedding in front of your friends and family, unless you have a friend who's a judge who will come do it, that's probably not an option. You can just do it at the courthouse, but that's kind of a sterile environment. It's not maybe where you want to have it. It's just a little basic ceremony, if they even do a ceremony, and sign it. So the people who are, one type of couple that comes to me are the ones where the couple themselves are not religious at all. So they want to have a nice wedding someplace, and they do not want a religious person, and they don't particularly know somebody that's a judge or a clerk that'll come to it. Another kind of couple, or a couple that I've done a lot of these, they're religious in some way, but the churches many times have a lot of restrictions on how they do the weddings, and they don't want to have to do that. Some denominations, the Catholic Church for one, and some of the Protestant ones, they will not do a marriage unless the couple goes through a series of counseling sessions. Now, some couples don't want to do that. Some churches will not do it if it's a second marriage. They've been divorced, okay? I had this conversation explaining this to my hairdresser the other day, who has a second marriage, and she's Catholic. And she didn't understand this, and I said, okay, so now the first time you got married, who did it? Well, a priest did it. I said, well, what about the second time? Well, we got married in Vegas, so it didn't make any difference. I said, who married you in Vegas? What she didn't know, and most people don't know, is as I read the Nevada marriage law, it has to be a religious minister. Okay? Mm-hmm. Well, she said, yeah, but I couldn't have the priest do it. The priest wouldn't do it. And I said, yeah, because you're divorced. She said, well, yeah, I could do it. The priest would do it if I divorced, if I got it annulled. And I said, yeah, but you didn't want to go through all that, did you? Get it annulled. So see, she would be the type of person that might want our services, okay?
Right.
They went to Vegas. They got married in Vegas. She has no clue who this person was ordained or certified by.
Right. Could be Church of Elvis.
That's right. They might have been, you know, what we would say a legitimate organized religion that they were ordained by. I don't know. My daughter got married in Seattle. They didn't want a religious wedding. They found this guy who was a former Catholic priest who had gotten out of the priesthood because he wanted to get married, but he still had his ordination, so he was legal and did it. So it could be somebody like that. But there's these online sites that you can get on, and anybody can get ordained.
Universal Life Church being one.
As a minister, and they can do it. But, that's because they're pretending to be religious. We're saying we don't think we should have to pretend to be religious. So a lot of people, and I think a lot of those Las Vegas weddings and that kind of thing are probably, many of them are, maybe they're ordained by a regular religious organization, but probably a lot of them are the online people.
Right.
And some people just get a friend or a brother or somebody to do it, and it works. It's legal. She was kind of offended when I told her that, and I said, "Well, Jeannie, your marriage is legal. There's nothing wrong with it, And I think it made her kind of think about it because she's so strong Catholic that, I don't know. Well, anyway. But, and a church might say, you have to have it in the church. You have to have certain music. You can't have you can't have your brother or somebody do this because they're gay or something. You never know. There's all kind of restrictions. And they want to have it where they want to have it. They want to have their ceremony the way they want it. And a lot of churches won't do that. Many ministers are not allowed to do a marriage unless it's in their church. Mm-hmm. And then the other type of couple I get are people that one family is one religion and the other family is another religion. And if they're very strong in their convictions, this could be a big family fight.
So the compromise would be to get somebody...
Would be a neutral ground. Okay. We're not having it in the synagogue or the Catholic Church. We're not having it in the Baptist temple or the Catholic Church or whatever. We're going to have it in a neutral place so nobody's offended by having to go where they don't want to go. And it won't be performed by the clergy of one side of the family or another. It's just neutral. Mm-hmm. And some couples like that. I mean, our ceremonies are not anti-religious. They just don't have religion in them.
Right. So
secular means just religion
without
neutral.
Regard to religion, not anti-religious.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So that's where we come in. And as it stands right now, CFI started a Secular Celebrant training program in 2009. Now, the law does not require anybody else to show that they've had training in doing ceremonies before they're legal to do it, right? Mm-hmm. Including the online people. But we figured in order to establish our legitimacy, we were going to be held to a higher standard. So we wanted to be able to show that we really had a certification program before we took the case. So that's one of the reasons we've waited. And we have secular celebrants who do ceremonies for people. And
yes, I have once.
As you have, yes, as you have. And because Steve is a certified secular celebrant, he's one of ours here in Indiana. And if somebody calls me, I tell them up front, okay, here's the deal. We can do your ceremony for you, but we cannot officially solemnize your marriage. That means sign it. So you'll have to have somebody else do that. And what we recommend is that when they get their license at the courthouse, they go ahead and have the clerk or the judge do it there, and then we can do their ceremony. Now, Susan Lancer did a really big wedding. She said it was a beautiful wedding at the Arts Garden a few weeks ago. And that's what that couple did. They went, I think, the day before to the city county building. They got their official marriage license signed there, and then they did their commitment in front of their friends and family in the big wedding the next day. But we're saying people shouldn't have to do that. So the suit is against the clerk of Marion County, because the clerk of the county is the one who enforces the law. Basically, they're the ones that issue the marriage license. And it could have been any county in Indiana, but since we're in Indianapolis, that's where it is. Not that that clerk did anything wrong. They're just upholding the law. We're all operating within the law. It's the law we object to. And the grounds for the case are under the Constitution. The First Amendment, the Establishment Clause, privileging religion over non-religion, because religious clergy can solemnize marriages, and our secular celebrants cannot. And under the 14th Amendment, Equal Protection Clause.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sit back and wait right now, and we'll see what
Okay.
happens. But it's a landmark case because in no state in the Union can our secular celebrants just under that certification do it. Now, in some states, there's ways they can get around it, but not just under that certification.
Okay. And sort of dovetailing into that, because we have LGBT issues going on, CFI Indy is putting up a table once again at the Indy Pride event, and that is a week from this Saturday.
Right.
Right. So what's the date today?
It's June the 9th.
Okay.
Is
So
the Indy Pride celebration, which is a huge festival.
So if you're watching this before June the 9th, please stop down at the CFI tent and see all the rest of it as well.
Yeah, we'll have materials. We have a lot of freebies to give away this year, buttons and stickers and all kinds of stuff. And Indy Pride this year is trying to be more family friendly, so they're having activities for children and adults. So they asked organizations if they were willing to have an activity, and we signed on to have an activity, which means we get to have our booth closer to the entrance, and we got to have 2 booths for the price of 1. So we're having 2 activities. One we are going to call the Bubble Zone. So if you'd like to go play with soap bubbles, you can come to that. And the other is going to be a Draw a Family. What is a family? So people can depict their idea of a family there.
Great. So to the LGBT community, just want to let you know that we in the Freethought community are one of your strongest allies, as we have no objections to people of the same sex forming family units or getting married for that matter.
Right, and our marriage suit right now does not say anything about same-sex marriage.
Which is already illegal.
It's already illegal in Indiana, so that's a moot point, and it probably, if we put that in there, it might have been a red flag to some people anyway. But if we win the suit, it will also benefit same-sex couples when same-sex marriage does become legal.
Right.
Because they'll probably have more of a problem finding somebody to solemnize their marriage.
The less progressive churches and religions will not be willing to marry them.
Right. And people say, well, there's always the option of having a judge or a clerk do it. Well, that's true. But maybe you want more than that. Maybe you want somebody to do it who reflects your philosophy of life.
Yes.
And you want to have a nice wedding, and you don't want to have to go this 2-step thing.
Exactly.
So that's where the point of our suit is.
Okay, and a little further down the road, in February, I believe, we're going to have another Civic Day at the State Courthouse?
At the Indiana State House.
State House.
Last year we had a program, we called it Civic Day, at the Indiana State House, emphasizing some of the issues in Indiana that we are concerned about. And we're going to have, I'd kind of like to see this be an annual thing. We'll see how it goes. But our second one will be on February the 9th at the State House. And we'll be again talking about issues in Indiana that basically involve church-state separation in one way or another.
Okay. Do we have any specific topics that we're covering?
What I'm planning on having a panel on science education in Indiana, because not just the creation evolution thing, but general science education, because that's something that really our organization is very interested in. And then an update on the issues that we talked about last year, which don't seem to go away in Indiana. Mm-hmm. So we'll have a panel on people updating us on what's happened in the last year and how things stand on reproductive issues, on LGBT issues, and on the school voucher.
Yeah, like
program.
We mentioned before, gay and lesbian same-sex couple marriage is already illegal, and there's always another bill being put through to make it double illegal.
Right.
I guess the point is to make it harder. They know that the fight is coming in the future. It's going to make it extra hard to overturn what, the two rulings rather than just the one?
Well, this is a constitutional amendment. So
Right.
if the constitutional amendment is added, that makes it harder to overturn.
And what is it currently that there is it just the state law?
Right now it's a state law.
Okay,
But they would like to add it's pretty much like Prop 8 in California.
right.
And we're in the final stages. We got to that point a few years ago. We're back to that point again where if it passes the legislature this year, it will be on the ballot for the people to vote on it. And so, I don't know.
There seems something wrong about the general public, who a lot of whom are not very well informed, voting on people's rights.
Right, but I
Doesn't
think
seem-
the positive thing maybe since it's taken so long is the longer it takes, the opinion is shifting,
That's true.
and particularly among the younger people. So we'll just have to see how that goes, but that's still an issue in Indiana.
Okay. Well, that's it for this week's show. Hopefully we'll be doing it weekly or bi-weekly, or at least a little bit more frequently than we have been. For the Indy Freethought Show, I'm Steve Dewar.
And I'm Reba Wooden.
Okay, thanks for watching.